Imagine this. Your phone buzzes unexpectedly, and you unlock it to find a cryptic text, a message that sends a jolt through you, pinpointing your exact location, as if some unseen force were watching. You freeze, the mundane surroundings transforming into a scene straight out of a thriller. In the silence that follows, you swear you hear a muted sound, a whisper in the dark that doesn't belong, lingering at the edge of your awareness. If moments like these have ever left you paralyzed with fear, just wait. What I'm about to reveal might compel you to rethink every door you've ever left unlocked.
Hello, Night Owls. I am Dusky Nights, and I bring you real-life horror stories that will help you sleep, or maybe keep you awake. But before we start, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it right now? Also, do not forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel.
It was 10:31 p.m. when my phone lit up, the vibration cutting through the quiet of our living room in Pine Hollow, a small town nestled in southern Maine's dense forests. I was sprawled on the couch, half watching a sitcom rerun when the screen flashed. Emergency alert. Do not enter underground structure such as basements. Stay above ground until all clear. My stomach dropped, the words glowing like a threat in the dim light. Across the room, Ethan looked up from his phone, his face pale, eyes locking on mine. "You got it too?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, my gaze darting to the basement door, its chain lock glinting under the lamp. Our daughter, Lily, 5 years old, was asleep upstairs, tucked in an hour ago after a bedtime story. Pine Hollow's a sleepy place. Split-level homes, gravel drives, pines crowding every yard. But that alert felt alive, personal, like it knew us. "What's going on?" I whispered, standing, my slippers scuffing the hardwood. Ethan shrugged, already flipping through channels on the TV. "Gas leak, maybe." "Radon." We'd had a radon pump in the basement since buying the house 2 years back. A fixer-upper we'd poured our savings into. I ran upstairs to check on Lily, my heart thudding, while Ethan landed on the local news, a black screen, white text repeating the alert, pixelated bars jittering like a bad signal. Lily was fine, curled under her quilt, breathing soft, but I lingered, watching her chest rise, needing to be sure. Back downstairs, Ethan stood by the TV, arms crossed, the alert still looping. "Do not enter underground structure." No explanation, no news anchors, just those words and a low hum that made my teeth ache. "We should leave," I said, grabbing my phone, my fingers already texting Mia, a mom from Lily's preschool who lived a few streets over. "Did you get a weird alert?" No reply. Ethan frowned, glancing at the stairs. "It's late, Claire. Lily's got school tomorrow." I shook my head, pacing to the kitchen, where I yanked open a drawer for duct tape. "School can wait. We'll go to my mom's. She's an hour away." He followed, leaning in the doorway as I knelt by the basement door, taping the cracks, the rolls squeaking in my hands. "If it's radon or something, I don't want it leaking up here," I muttered, though the alert's words felt bigger than gas, heavier. Ethan sighed. "They'd evacuate us for that, wouldn't they?" I tore off another strip, the adhesive sticking to my fingers. "Then what is it?" He didn't answer, just watched, his jaw tight. The house felt too still. Our street, lined with pines that blocked the stars, was silent. No sirens, no neighbors stirring. If everyone got the alert, where was the panic? I stood, tape dangling, and grabbed a duffel from the closet, my mind racing. Clothes, Lily's stuffed rabbit, my laptop, anything we'd need. "Get Lily," I told Ethan, heading for the fridge to pack a cooler with milk, apple, leftover chicken. 10 minutes later, we were ready, the sinister alerts burning in my head like a warning I couldn't decode. Outside, the night was sharp, the air biting through my jacket as I hauled the bags to our SUV parked in the drive. The pines loomed over Pine Hollow, their needles whispering in the breeze, the only sound besides a distant dog barking. I glanced at the house across the street, dark, except for a motion sensor light flicking on, its glow catching nothing but empty pavement. If the alert hit everyone, why wasn't anyone else loading cars, checking doors? Ethan came out, carrying Lily, her face buried in his shoulder blanket, trailing. She blinked at me, sleepy, and I strapped her into her car seat, my hands clumsy with nerves. Ethan tossed in his work bag, laptop, chargers, a half-read novel, and we pulled out, the tires crunching gravel, the town fading behind us. Lily drifted off again, her head lolling as streetlights flashed across her face. We hit the highway, the road stretching empty under a sky pricked with stars, and I let myself breathe, thinking distance might dull the fear. Then my phone buzzed, the sound like a jolt to my bones. "Emergency alert. Your GPS indicates you are leaving Pine Hollow, me. We do not recommend evacuating. Please return home and stay above ground." I stared at it, the words sinking in, my voice barely a whisper. "Ethan, it knows we're leaving." He glanced over, his knuckles white on the wheel. "What?" I held up the phone, the screen's glow lighting his frown. "It's tracking us." It was 10:31 p.m. when my phone lit up, the vibration cutting through the quiet of our living room in Pine Hollow, a small town nestled in southern Maine's dense forests. I was sprawled on the couch, half watching a sitcom rerun when the screen flashed. "Emergency alert. Do not enter underground structure such as basements. Stay above ground until all clear." My stomach dropped, the words glowing like a threat in the dim light. Across the room, Ethan looked up from his phone, his face pale, eyes locking on mine. "You got it too?" he asked, voice low. I nodded, my gaze darting to the basement door, its chain lock glinting under the lamp. Our daughter, Lily, 5 years old, was asleep upstairs, tucked in an hour ago after a bedtime story. Pine Hollow's a sleepy place. Split-level homes, gravel drives, pines crowding every yard. But that alert felt alive, personal, like it knew us. "What's going on?" I whispered, standing, my slippers scuffing the hardwood. Ethan shrugged, already flipping through channels on the TV. "Gas leak, maybe." "Radon." We'd had a radon pump in the basement since buying the house 2 years back. A fixer-upper we'd poured our savings into. I ran upstairs to check on Lily, my heart thudding, while Ethan landed on the local news, a black screen, white text repeating the alert, pixelated bars jittering like a bad signal. Lily was fine, curled under her quilt, breathing soft. But I lingered, watching her chest rise, needing to be sure. Back downstairs, Ethan stood by the TV, arms crossed, the alert still looping. "Do not enter underground structure." No explanation, no news anchors, just those words and a low hum that made my teeth ache. "We should leave," I said, grabbing my phone, my fingers already texting Mia, a mom from Lily's preschool who lived a few streets over. "Did you get a weird alert?" No reply. Ethan frowned, glancing at the stairs. "It's late, Claire. Lily's got school tomorrow." I shook my head, pacing to the kitchen, where I yanked open a drawer for duct tape. "School can wait. We'll go to my mom's. She's an hour away." He followed, leaning in the doorway as I knelt by the basement door, taping the cracks, the rolls squeaking in my hands. "If it's radon or something, I don't want it leaking up here," I muttered, though the alert's words felt bigger than gas, heavier. Ethan sighed. "They'd evacuate us for that, wouldn't they?" I tore off another strip, the adhesive sticking to my fingers. "Then what is it?" He didn't answer, just watched, his jaw tight. The house felt too still. Our street, lined with pines that blocked the stars, was silent. No sirens, no neighbors stirring. If everyone got the alert, where was the panic? I stood, tape dangling, and grabbed a duffel from the closet, my mind racing. Clothes, Lily's stuffed rabbit, my laptop, anything we'd need. "Get Lily," I told Ethan, heading for the fridge to pack a cooler with milk, apple, leftover chicken. 10 minutes later, we were ready, the sinister alerts burning in my head like a warning I couldn't decode. Outside, the night was sharp, the air biting through my jacket as I hauled the bags to our SUV parked in the drive. The pines loomed over Pine Hollow, their needles whispering in the breeze, the only sound besides a distant dog barking. I glanced at the house across the street, dark, except for a motion sensor light flicking on, its glow catching nothing but empty pavement. If the alert hit everyone, why wasn't anyone else loading cars, checking doors? Ethan came out, carrying Lily, her face buried in his shoulder, blanket trailing. She blinked at me, sleepy, and I strapped her into her car seat, my hands clumsy with nerves. Ethan tossed in his work bag, laptop, chargers, a half-read novel, and we pulled out, the tires crunching gravel, the town fading behind us. Lily drifted off again, her head lolling as streetlights flashed across her face. We hit the highway, the road stretching empty under a sky pricked with stars, and I let myself breathe, thinking distance might dull the fear. Then my phone buzzed, the sound like a jolt to my bones. Emergency alert. Your GPS indicates you are leaving Pine Hollow, me. We do not recommend evacuating. Please return home and stay above ground. I stared at it, the words sinking in, my voice barely a whisper. Ethan, it knows we're leaving. He glanced over, his knuckles white on the wheel. What? I held up the phone, the screen's glow lighting his frown. It's tracking us. We didn't speak for miles, the hum of the engine filling the silence, the pines flashing by, tall, jagged, their shadows clawing the road. Ethan's voice finally broke through, quiet but firm. They can't do that, right? GPS data's private. I swallowed, my throat dry. Unless it's some emergency override, FEMA, FBI, something. But it didn't feel like that. It felt personal, like eyes on us, following. I texted Mia again. You sure you didn't get anything? And tried Googling Pine Hollow, emergency alert. But the signal dropped. My phone stuck on a blank page. Ethan switched lanes, the click of the blinker loud in the quiet. You're not thinking we should go back, are you? He asked, glancing at me. I shook my head, fast, no way. But doubt crept in. Why was the highway empty? If this was real, where were the other cars, the flashing lights? Pine Hollow sat near wildfire country. Patches of forest burned black from summers past, the kind where pines regenerate, their cones splitting open in heat. I'd read that somewhere, how fire was part of the cycle here, life clawing back from ash. My phone pinged, not an alert, but Mia. What alert? Nothing here. I froze, rereading it. Ethan, Mia didn't get anything. She's 3 streets over. He frowned, eyes on the road. That's impossible. Alerts hit whole areas, not just us. My hand shook as I typed back, check again, says stay above ground. Her reply was instant. Nada. You okay? I didn't answer, my pulse hammering, the eerie messages twisting in my mind, like a warning meant only for us. 5 miles out, the pines thinned, giving way to a stretch of charred forest, stumps and ash glowing faintly under the moon, survivors standing like sentinels in the ruin. I leaned against the window, the glass cold on my cheek, trying to shake the feeling we'd made a mistake. What if the basement was safer? I whispered, half to myself. Ethan's voice was gentle, like he was talking me down. Claire, that's your anxiety. We're doing the right thing getting out, getting to your mom's. I nodded, wanting to believe him, but the alerts felt alive, watching, pulling us back. The car slowed, Ethan easing off the gas, and I looked up. A shape in the road, caught in the headlights, tall and wrong. "Dear," he muttered, braking hard. But it wasn't. Thin legs, twisted like roots, stretched up into the dark, toes curling where hooves should be. Beyond the beams, a silhouette loomed, skeletal, crisscrossed, like branches, woven tight, no face, just lines against the stars. My breath caught, the world tilting, a pressure crushing my skull. "Ethan!" I gasped, and then, thwack! Something slammed the car's side, rocking us hard. Lily woke, crying, as another hit came. Thwack! A tangle of sticks or bones filling my window, the pines warping behind it, like a dream gone wrong. Ethan floored it, swerving past the thing, the tires screaming as we cleared the burned patch and sped into the dark, the unexplained threat, fading but not gone. My phone buzzed again, the sound slicing through Lily's sobs. I fumbled it out, hands trembling, expecting another warning, but it was worse. Emergency alert. All clear. Please return home immediately. I stared, the words blurring, my mouth dry. "All clear," Ethan echoed, his voice tight. Eyes flicking to the rear view like he expected it to follow. After that, I clutched the phone, Lily's cries softening as I shushed her, my mind racing. The alerts had tracked us, named our town, our exit. Now this? It didn't feel safe. It felt like bait. We kept driving, the highway curving through unburned pines, their shadows swallowing the road. My mom's place was 50 minutes out now, a straight shot. But every mile stretched longer, the silence between us heavy. I tried Mia one more time. "Call me, please." But the signal died, my phone useless. Ethan's hands stayed tight on the wheel, his jaw set, and I watched the trees, half expecting another shape to step out. Its shadowy pines, hiding something older than fire, older than us. Lily's breathing slowed, her head against the seat, and I whispered, "We're okay," though I didn't believe it. The alerts weren't saving us. They were steering us, and I couldn't shake the feeling we'd left the only safe place behind. We hit Willow Creek just after midnight, my mom's bungalow a faint outline against the forest, the pines pressing closer than I remembered. I carried Lily inside, her weight grounding me, while Ethan hauled our bags, his face drawn like he hadn't slept in days. Mom was up, waiting in her kitchen, the air thick with coffee and dust, her eyes narrowing as I headed for the basement stairs. "We're sleeping down there," I said, already moving, the haunted escape still clawing at my nerves. The alerts The thing on the road, the way it moved, they weren't accidents. Something wanted us above ground, exposed, and I wasn't giving in. If you've ever felt sinister alerts, track your every move, seen an unexplained threat in shadowy pines, or followed eerie messages to a haunted escape, send your story to nightroads@gmail.com. I post new tales every Tuesday and Saturday. Subscribe if you're still running. There's a link below to chip in $1 or $2. Keeps me chasing these nightmares, if we make it. Don't trust your phone, don't stop moving. Some things know exactly where you are. We pulled into my mom's driveway just past midnight, the car's headlights cutting through the fog that clung to her street in Willow Creek, a small town tucked into the edge of northern Maine's pine forests. Her house is a low, cedar-sided bungalow, sitting alone at the end of a gravel road where the trees lean in close, their branches scraping the roof when the wind kicks up. I glanced at the woods behind her place, dark, endless, swallowing the moonlight, and felt a shiver that wasn't from the cold. I scooped up Ellie, our 4-year-old, from the back seat, her head heavy against my shoulder, and carried her inside, Noah trailing behind with our bags. Mom was waiting in the kitchen, her hands wrapped around a chipped mug, the air thick with the smell of burnt coffee and old books. I started toward the guest room, then stopped. The house has a basement, half finished, with a desk, a couch, and walls of bare concrete. It's below ground, safer than upstairs, I thought. We're sleeping down there, I told Mom, already moving for the stairs, ignoring her frown. Those emergency alerts. Do not enter your basement. Stay above ground. Had been buzzing our phones for hours, starting back at our place in Augusta, 60 miles away. I hadn't told her everything. Not about the shape I'd seen in the trees, the way it moved, like it wasn't touching the ground. She'd call it stress, a trick of the light, but I knew better, and so did Noah. The cryptic alerts weren't a prank, they were a trap. Mom followed me to the basement door, her voice sharp as I fumbled with the bolt. Sarah, you're not serious. It's a mess down there. Dust, spiders, probably mice. You've got Ellie to think about. She stood in the hallway, arms crossed, her gray hair catching the dim light. Those alerts are nonsense, some hacker's idea of a joke. You're an hour away now, safe. I shook my head, sliding the bolt free. We're staying down here. Noah set the bags down, his face tight, not meeting her eyes. He hadn't spoken much since we left home, since the second alert hit, naming our exact location. Your GPS shows you are in Augusta, me. Return home. Stay above ground. Mom kept talking, bringing up the time I'd sealed our attic shut as a kid, scared of squirrels after one got in. You always overreact, she said softer now. But I ignored her, carrying Ellie down the creaky stairs. The basement smelled of damp stone and mildew, the air cooler than upstairs. I settled Ellie on the couch, tucking a blanket around her, and checked my phone. Nothing new, just the old alerts glowing like threats. Noah came down, his boots heavy on the steps, and Mom lingered at the top, sighing before heading back to her room. I scanned the space, a desk piled with Dad's old papers, a photo of him faded at the edges, gone 6 years now. One wall had a sliding glass door to the backyard, level with the ground outside, the forest just beyond. It made my shin crawl, half underground, half not. Were we really safe? The basement felt like a bunker at first, solid, quiet, a shield against whatever was out there. I spread blankets on the floor for Noah and me, the carpet rough under my hands, and checked the glass door again, locking it tight. The pines loomed outside, their shadows swaying, and I tried to convince myself nothing could get through. Glass is stronger than wood, right? Back at home, we'd locked every door, stayed upstairs like the alert said. But that thing in the woods had still pressed against our windows, its shape too tall, too thin, moving wrong. Here, an hour away, it felt farther, but not gone. Noah sat by Ellie, brushing hair from her face, his voice low. "You think it followed us?" I didn't answer, just shook my phone, hoping for a signal to call Jess, a friend from work who might have seen the alerts too. No bars. I pulled up Google Maps instead, searching for wildfire scars near Willow Creek. Those things seemed tied to burned land, didn't they? But the app froze. Useless. Then my phone buzzed, the screen lighting up my hands. Emergency alert. Your GPS indicates you are in Willow Creek. Me. Disobeying an emergency alert is a federal offense. Return home and stay above ground. Noah leaned over, his breath catching as he read it, his eyes reflecting the white glow. "They know where we are," he whispered. I nodded, my mouth dry, and glanced at the glass door again, half expecting to see something staring back, an unseen threat. Waiting in the dark, Ellie stirred around 3 a.m., her blanket slipping as she mumbled in her sleep. I tucked it back, my hands shaking, and sat against the couch, listening to the house settle. Creaks from the pipes, a hum from the furnace upstairs. Noah was out cold, one arm over his face, but I couldn't close my eyes. The alerts kept looping in my head, their words too precise, too personal. Why us? I thought of Jess again and texted her. "Did you get any weird alerts tonight?" Not expecting a reply, my phone pinged almost instantly. "Yeah, my cousin Mia got one too, out in Bangor. Freaky, right?" My stomach twisted. Bangor was 2 hours east, same state, different woods. I typed back. What did it say? Don't listen to it. She sent Mia's number, and I called, pacing the basement's edge, the glass door catching my reflection like a ghost. Mia answered on the 4th ring, sleepy. "Hello?" I kept my voice low, explaining the alerts. how they tracked us, how they felt wrong. Don't stay above ground, I said. Get somewhere low, basement, cellar, anything. She laughed, nervous. It's just a glitch, probably. My kids are asleep upstairs. I'm not waking them. I pushed harder, telling her about Augusta, the shadow, but she cut me off. Gotta go. Sorry, we're fine. The call dropped, and I stood there, gripping the phone, Noah's snores the only sound. She didn't buy it, I muttered, sinking beside him. The basement terror was ours alone, and I couldn't shake the feeling we'd brought it here. Dawn crept through the glass door, gray and thin, painting the basement in shadows. I dozed off for maybe an hour, my neck stiff from the floor, when Ellie's gasp woke me. She was sitting up, eyes wide, staring past me at the door. "Mommy," she whispered, pointing a tiny finger. I turned slow, dread pooling in my chest. Something moved outside, long, wiry limbs twisting like roots, folding itself against the glass, silent except for a faint click, click, like bones snapping into place. It wasn't human, wasn't animal, just wrong, squeezing through a jagged hole in the pane, shards glittering on the carpet. I grabbed Noah's shoulder, shaking him hard. "Noah, wake up!" The thing froze, its form blurring in the dim light. No face, no eyes, but I felt it lock onto me, a weight pressing my lungs. Ellie whimpered, and I shoved her toward the storage room, a cramped space with a steel door near the desk. "Hide, baby. Go." She ran, bare feet slapping concrete, and I dragged Noah up, his eyes bleary but widening as he saw it. The room spun, colors smearing like wet paint, the air heavy with a smell like charred wood and rot. I stumbled, nausea hitting hard, and for a second I saw Dad standing by the couch, his face half melted, one eye sagging, his voice a warped echo. "Hey, sweetheart," he said, too soft, too wrong. "Come with me." I gagged, bile rising, and Noah yanked me back, his hand tight on my arm. "Sarah, move!" The thing at the door twitched, its limbs curling inward, and I screamed, "It's not him," as the world tilted back into focus. Pain tore through my arm, sharp and hot, ripping me from the haze. I hit the floor, gasping, my sleeve wet with blood, teeth marks deep and ragged, like a bite from something that shouldn't exist. Noah hauled me toward the storage room, Ellie's face peeking from the crack in the door, her sobs muffled. The thing was inside now, its shape unfolding across the basement, too tall for the ceiling, clicking louder, faster. I crawled, vision blurring, and slammed the steel door behind us, Noah jamming a chair under the handle. The air in here was stale, packed with boxes and Dad's old tools, the single bulb flickering above. My phone rang shrill and sudden, and I fumbled it out. Rachel, Jess's cousin. "You were right," she said, voice shaking, no hello. The alert, it's not from the government. My brother's a tech guy. Trace the signal. I held my breath, arm throbbing, blood dripping onto the concrete. It's coming from the woods. Middle of nowhere. Some burned patch. I froze, picturing the pines outside, the blackened scars I'd seen on hikes years ago. Noah met my eyes, his face pale, and Ellie clung to my leg, whispering, "What's out there, Mommy?" The door rattled, soft at first, then harder. The haunted woods pressing in, their secrets spilling through the cracks. I clutched the phone, Richelle still talking, but a new sound cut through. Scratching, not at the door, but inside the walls, like claws carving their way closer. The bulb popped, plunging us into dark, and Ellie screamed, her voice swallowed by a low growl that wasn't hers, not Noah's, not mine. The scratching spread, circling us, the air thick with that charred smell, now mixed with something sour, alive. My phone screen glowed, 3% battery. Richelle's call cutting out as another alert flashed. You cannot hide. Stay above ground. Noah pressed against the door, his shoulders straining as it shook, the chair creaking under pressure. Sarah, it's not just one, he hissed. And I saw it then, shapes in the shadows, not outside but here, flickering where the boxes stacked against the walls. They weren't solid, not yet, but they moved. Long, spindly, like branches weaving themselves into forms that mimicked us. One reached for Ellie, its edge grazing her hair, and I yanked her back, my arm screaming with pain, blood slick on my fingers. Stay with me, I whispered, pulling her close, my voice breaking. The growling grew, words forming in it. Family. Together. And I saw Dad again, not in my head, but there, his jaw hanging loose, arms stretching toward us, too many fingers curling. I swung a wrench from the floor, the metal passing through him, hitting nothing but air. And he laughed, a sound like snapping twigs. My phone died, the screen black, and the door buckled, wood splintering as the paranormal signals burned in my mind, sent from the woods, luring us up where they could reach. Something cold brushed my neck, not Dad, not the kids, but the unseen threat we'd let in. And I realized the basement wasn't safe. It was theirs. I'm typing this now, battery fading. Ellie curled against me, Noah's hands bloody from holding the door. The scratchings inside the room, the walls alive with it, and the growls weave with whispers. You brought us. You stay. Like we're part of their trap. Willow Creek's pines are out there, burned and waiting, and I know now the alerts weren't saving us. They were hurting us, picking us out. Jess hasn't texted back. Richelle's line is dead, and the cops won't find us in time. Not here, not with what's coming. The door is cracking. The air's smoke and bone. And Ellie's staring at something I can't see, her eyes wide like she knows. The Yarrows had been the boogeymen in Ivy since long before even my grandparents' time. The story our parents told us before tucking us in at night was simple, short, but most importantly, terrifying. According to local legend, the Yarrow family came from a long lineage of ne'er-do-wells, drunkards, and murderers. Mama told me that even before the town was called Ivy, there was a Yarrow here causing trouble. The story went that many decades ago, when the men of the town began coming home from the war, they had found chaos waiting for their arrival. The Yarrow boys had taken the soldiers' wives and children as their own. They'd killed the Reverend, and they'd taken over the coal mine. And Old Man Yarrow, through it all, he'd never put down the bottle or stopped laying with his own daughters. So, the soldiers did what soldiers do. In the dead of night, they drove the family down into Ivy Mine and sealed the main entrance, saving the town. The story said that they still lived down there, tunneling beneath our feet, breeding like rabbits, and waiting for the day some poor kid would stumble into the mine shaft and become lunch. I used to lie awake at night, ear pressed against the floorboard, listening for the sounds of digging and whispering down below. When I turned 10, my older brother Shane explained to me what everyone else in the town already knew, that the story was just a tall tale, a fable invented by the grown-ups to keep us young'uns out of the mines. Every old mining town had a similar story. Some told their kids there were ghosts in the tunnels. Some insisted the bats chirping through the night were real vampires waiting to bleed you dry. Our town's version was just a bit more creative. It took some convincing to finally believe that there weren't ancient mole men under my feet waiting to eat me alive. Everyone in the town treated the Yarrow story like gospel, and it was hard to wrap my head around it. I eventually accepted that sometimes adults had to invent monsters to keep you safe from something real that's just as dangerous. Truth is, I think I would have just kept on believing the Yarrow story if it hadn't been for Shane. I was 10, still afraid of the dark corners of our trailer, still saying a prayer each night, even though no one ever made me. Shane was 5 years older and acted like he'd already lived 2 full lives before I came around. He talked in a way where even when he was dead wrong, you'd believe him anyhow, just because he sounded like he knew better. It wasn't long afterwards that he stopped coming to church, said he didn't like how the pastor spoke like he was better than us, said he could find God on his own if God even wanted to be found. He started hanging out with his older friends most Sundays, poking around near the edge of town. That's when they must have found it, the one mine entrance left unsealed, the one remaining gaping mouth opened up deep into the hollows of the earth. It was one of those hot Appalachian summers where even the shadows gave you sunburn. The dry spell had kept us mostly inside, dependent on the sweet, cool air conditioning. One Saturday we awoke to a beautiful sight, an overcast sky, cool and dim, promising the refreshing rain we'd waited so long for. There was no way we could spend the rest of the day indoors. Shane and I walked down to the river with a couple of his buddies, all older than me, all itching for trouble. Somewhere along the way, the talk turned back to the newly discovered entrance. It usually did. Well, I bet none of you got the balls to go past the old minecart. Ricky, the oldest of the group, said with a sly grin. What would you know? You ain't even been far enough in to see the damn cart yet, Shane shot back. Have to, Ricky shot back. I saw the cart. And then, some last week, it goes deeper than we thought. Ricky stopped where he stood. His grin widened. There was an old lantern about 40 feet ahead of where I stopped. If you're so much braver than us, I double dog dare you to go in and bring it back out. That's how it started. A dare. So stupid and reckless, but tantalizing. Ricky said if Shane could make it to the lantern, bringing it back out as proof he'd gone further than anyone had, he'd give him $10. That was enough to get Shane interested. As the older boys started making the short hike to the mine entrance, I followed like I usually did. Shane told me I didn't have to, but I didn't want to be the scared little brother. Not again. The rain had started to drizzle, and then fall, and then pour. By the time we made it to the dilapidated hole carved in the side of the rock face, we were all drenched, the wind howling through the trees. A light flashed in the sky, and thunder echoed through the holler. As we approached, Shane looked shaky. Guys, the storm is picking up. Can we do this tomorrow? Pa will kill me if I don't get Caleb home soon. Ricky rolled his eyes, pulling a wadded bill out of his pocket. See this, Shane? This 10 becomes a 5 if you wait until tomorrow. It ain't even gonna be raining inside the mine. You ain't got nothing to worry about. Unless you're scared old Daddy Yarrow's gonna get you down there. I looked up at my elder brother, his expression hardening. Lightning illuminated the sky, and thunder boomed from above as he snatched the money out of Ricky's hand. The other boys cheered, patting him on the back and egging him on. I stood waiting with the other boys as he nervously stepped inside. Even just a few feet in, I could hardly see his lanky frame, the shrouded sky not lending the narrow passage an ounce of sunlight. Can he even see in there? I mumbled to one of the older boys. Sure he can, I could, Ricky sneered. But it's pretty dark out today. I just think maybe. Ricky rolled his eyes and put an annoyed hand to my face before fishing through his small backpack. He pulled a small orange flashlight out. It nearly slipped out of his hands when he handed it to me, the torrential rain making it slippery to the touch. Run this to him real quick if you're going to be such a baby about it. I stepped foot into the cave, the sound of wind and rain outside almost immediately muffling. I fumbled to turn the flashlight on and had to gently whack it against a softened wooden beam before it begrudgingly flickered to life. Shane stood about 20 feet ahead, gawking back at me through the dark. What the hell do you think you're doing, Caleb? Get out of here. I'll be back out in just a minute. I moved towards him, my sneakers slipping against the smooth stone floor. It's too dark in here. Ricky gave me a flashlight so you could see the lantern. He rolled his eyes before his face softened. All right, thanks, bud. Hand me that, and head back out. I won't be long." The words hadn't even finished leaving his mouth when the dim beam of the flashlight was swallowed up by an immense flash. The stone walls illuminated as though it were day. There was no delay in the sound either, as the unmistakable crack of thunder shot through the passage, piercing my ears before it echoed back once more. I turned fast on instinct, my shoes losing traction on the ground as I landed on my butt, facing outwards just in time to see the rotten wood supporting the mine's exit give way, the loose rock above collapsing down, blocking us in. I sat panting on the cold stone for what felt like minutes. I felt my brother's ragged breath stuttering behind me, suddenly very loud against the silence. I jumped when I felt his hand on my shoulder. It was cool and clammy, and I could tell he was trying to mask his own shaking. "Are you okay, Caleb? Are you hurt?" His voice cracked behind me. I took a breath. "I think I'm okay, are you?" He didn't say anything and helped me up with both hands. He dusted his overalls off and spoke, his voice elevated to almost a shout. "I said, Caleb, are you okay? You're not hurt, are you?" I shone the flashlight into his face, the dim beam now radiant in contrast to the pitch darkness. He turned away as the light hit his eyes, and I noticed a small red trickle dripping out of his ear. He must have caught my worried expression. He reached up and touched the side of his head, pulling away bloodied fingertips. "Shit," he scoffed. "I don't think I can hear." I winced, trying to stifle back tears of panic. I exaggerated my next words, mouthing them as clearly as possible for him to read my lips in the dim light. "How do we get out now?" He gently grabbed the flashlight from my shaking hand. "Don't know, bud. We could try to dig our way out of the collapse over there, but Pa warned me about rock slides. Even when they're over, you don't want to poke around nearby, or they could just start right back up. The whole mine is interconnected. There's gotta be another exit nearby." He paused, putting his hand to his forehead as though remembering something urgent. Shit, the others were still out there. They might try to get help, or the collapse might have. I looked up at him again, tears welling in his eyes. He composed himself, looking down at me. "We can't wait here. I've got the flashlight, but you'll need to let me know if you hear wind or rain, or any sign of a way out of here." I nodded, and after a moment of silence, we began to make our way further into the mine. After only a few moments, we passed a rusted mine cart, toppled over from the thin railings it had once ridden. As I held onto Shane's forearm, I felt it tense. "This is the furthest I've gotten. Ricky said there's a lantern about 40 feet ahead. So, after that, no one knows what's up ahead?" I asked nervously. Of course, he didn't hear me. He just kept on walking. Ricky had been right. The lantern sat just ahead, half buried in coal dust and silt, rusted to hell. It reminded me of what I had seen in the Ivy County Miners Museum, thick iron frame, broad glass sides, and a curled handle now bent almost flat. The glass was cracked, dried spattering of a black liquid I presumed to be oil covering its entirety. What caught my eye, though, was the nameplate near the base. Half buried in the dirt and hopelessly tarnished, I could only make out about the first half. Reverend. We didn't stop for long. Shane muttered something, louder, I'm sure, than he intended, about needing to hurry while there was still air to breathe down here. As I walked past the lantern, I kicked a shard of glass along the stone floor and heard the chittering echo reverberating for several seconds. I could have sworn that the noise continued on up ahead for just a moment longer than I thought it should have. I stooped down, putting the shard of glass in my pocket. We walked through the dark for what felt like hours. It couldn't have been more than just a few minutes, but the suffocating darkness and silence swallowed up every thought until it felt like the confines of the mine were all that there was. At some point, we came to a blockage in the Pathan, unfortunately familiar site. An artificial wall had been placed between two wooden supporting beams, dozens of 2x4s nailed, blocking off the way. Every other sealed entrance in town looked just like this. Planks hammered between beams laid over a century ago. For some reason, this entrance hadn't been blocked off at the exit, but further inside. I recalled the story of soldiers sealing a feral family down below and felt my forehead grow wet with sweat. As Shane moved to attempt to break open the barrier, I noticed in the faint light that there were words scratched into the rotting wood. May God forgive us, and may you find your boy. I tugged on Shane's damp sleeve, pulling him away as he attempted to tug on the planks, trying to remove them. I mouthed my words as clearly as I could manage through my shaking jaw. Can we turn back? I don't want to go down there. Maybe Ricky already got help. He shook his head. Come on, man. This is a good sign. It means we lucked out, that this entrance is for sure part of the rest of the mine system. It means there's definitely another way out if we can break the boards. Here, help me with this. I think I feel it coming loose. I hesitated for a second and moved over next to him, tugging on the plank he'd started to loosen from its fastenings. It only took a few moments before we felt it shift, and we nearly fell back as it gave way. There was only about a 4-inch gap in the wall, but it would be significantly easier to leverage the other planks out if we could grab them from behind. The missing plank was on eye level with me, and as Shane stuck his arm through the gap, flashlight in hand, I caught a glimpse of the beam shining wildly across the mine walls for just a brief second. In the dark, only barely illuminated, as the beam quickly moved on, I saw 2 pale eyes reflecting back through the darkness about 100 feet away. You'll have to remember that I was only 10 years old when I tell you that I screamed. It must have been loud enough that even with his damaged ears, Shane heard me and flinched before I could even stumble back and physically react to what I'd seen. I couldn't muster any words coherent enough for him to lip read, so I just pointed wildly into the gap, repeating, "Yarrow," until he got the message and shone the light back inside. He turned back to me, rolling his eyes as he once more helped me to my feet. "There's nothing back there, Caleb. I promise. Here, look." I approached the doorframe once more, nervously looking for the wide gaze I swore I'd seen only seconds ago. It was gone, but amidst my heavy breathing, I heard a faint sound up ahead, the same shifting sound of sliding glass shards on stone. Shane, please, I promise you. There was someone in there, looking at me. You have to believe me. Shane's expression hardened as he returned to pulling the rotted planks off of the beams. I told you, the Yarrow stories were made up. There's nothing living down in the mine. We need to keep going. Now. He was my older brother. I know that's a piss-poor excuse to blindly follow someone, but at that age I didn't know any better. Things might have worked out so much better if we just turned around then and waited for help. But instead, we pulled down the rest of the planks and pressed on. The skittering sound ahead continued. Shane, of course, never picked up on it, and I convinced myself it was just the echo of our own footsteps shuffling through the dark. But deep down, I knew what I'd seen, and I knew what I was hearing. Initially, we'd just been following the trail of the minecart tracks that had led from the entrance. There had been smaller passages that broke off to the side every now and then, but having the singular track be our trail of breadcrumbs ensured that we could always turn around if we needed to. As we went ever deeper, though, an occasional junction arose, a split where two paths would intersect, the tracks branching and weaving between tunnels. About 20 minutes after we breached the wooden barrier, the mine began to feel less like a tunnel and more like a block of Swiss cheese, riddled with holes and tunnels in every direction. We eventually came to a junction in which our primary track, among several others, reached a circular cutout on the ground. I was familiar enough with trains to recognize it as a railway turntable. We'd been underground for maybe an hour by now, and as Shane stood trying desperately to make sense of the branching pathways ahead, nature had begun to call. I turned to him and gestured that I needed to pee. Fine, just head into one of those side passageways and come right back here when you're done. I hesitated and pointed at the flashlight, too scared to go off by myself in the dark. He shrugged and handed me the light. I took it and made my way to a small tunnel on our left. I had the light pointed ahead of me at all times. I must have only gone 10 feet or so into the alternate path, but that was 10 whole feet of unknown territory. I still wasn't even sure if we were really alone down here, and I felt more comfortable being able to see what was ahead. I held the light with my teeth as I began to relieve myself, and as I zipped my fly back up, I heard the sound of skittering on stone from the passage behind, quickly followed by Shane's voice. "Whoa, hey man, not cool. Don't sneak up on me in the His words were cut off by his own scream as I heard the skittering intensify, followed by a thud and the sound of something being dragged across the floor. I turned as quickly as I could, flashlight in hand, and ran back into the junction chamber. Shane screamed bloody murder as I wildly shined the light from tunnel to tunnel, attempting to spot where he'd gone. I turned it to my right, just in time to catch his hands slipping against the ground, now wet with a thick black ooze, as he tried to stop himself from being dragged any further. I rounded the corner, and my narrow beam caught just a glimpse of his assailant. The frame of an emaciated man hunched over my brother, bony hands gripping his leg so tightly that I thought his ankle may have been broken. The man crawled backwards across the floor, his long and calloused feet wildly pushing against the floor as he tugged my brother back into the dark. His nails were long and twisted and scraped across stone with a skittering sound as he shuffled. His skin was incredibly pale, his dark veins clearly visible beneath his translucent flesh. The man was entirely hairless, save for a few straggling strands that frayed wildly from his wrinkled head. Out of his mouth dripped a thick, dark liquid. His eyes were ghostly white, the eyes of a blind man. Before he could pull Shane any further into the tunnel, I pulled the glass shard out of my pocket, lunging at his spider-like frame. As I collided with him, the flashlight fell out of my hands, the batteries falling out of the back as it collided with the stone floor, plunging us into total darkness. It wasn't until then that I realized I had no idea how to make an attack. I'd never even gotten in a fight at school, much less stabbed or sliced someone. But as I felt cold, clammy hands wrap themselves around my small wrist, I let instinct take over. I knew even in the darkness which figure was my brother and which was the attacker. His cold flesh felt disgusting to the touch, and his scent grew rancid with every inch I got closer to him. In the tussle, I swung my improvised weapon wildly, and I felt it connect with a wet thud. I heard a guttural wheeze, and the glass shard slid out of my hand as I felt the man let go of my other wrist quickly. I lurched forward, trying to throw a meager punch, but the man had already quickly escaped into the darkness. I sat frozen for only a few seconds, fighting back the pain in my hand where the glass had sliced my palm. I waited until the noise of the man skittering across the floor had completely subsided into the distant tunnels before I fumbled around on the ground, trying to find the flashlight and batteries. I felt Shane slowly sit up, his breath rapid, as he tried to be as quiet as possible. I eventually found the batteries and got them back into the flashlight. I turned it on and began to get my bearings. Shane was in very rough shape. As he'd been dragged across the ground, he'd been scraped on all manner of rough rock and metal. It looked like he'd managed to grab hold onto a plank of the cart rail, but his pinky had broken in the process, jutting out at an angle. He had been dragged through the black ichor that the man had been dripping, the sticky oil-like substance staining his clothes and blotting his wounds. He sat wide-eyed, furiously looking around into the darkness. After a moment of our ragged breathing, he turned to face me, his eyes welling with terrified tears. What the fuck was that? What just happened? What was that? He knew the answer, but I mouthed it for him again anyways. Yarrow. He waited only a few seconds more before standing up. He limped the leg that the yarrow had grabbed, his ankle bleeding. We have to get out of here now. I'm sorry I didn't believe you earlier, Caleb. I'm so sorry, but you were right. We need to get back to the entrance we came in from. They had to have gotten help right now. His breath was frantic and his voice even more so. We hobbled back to the junction, and I saw his face drop. Wait, no. Which way was it? Which way did we come in from? He was right. We hadn't been here nearly long enough to get our bearings, but none of the tunnels ahead struck me as the one we'd come from. Shane. I tugged his shirt again. Where was that thing trying to pull you? I don't know, down to the rest of them to eat me alive, I'm sure. We need to get as far away from that tunnel as possible. There could be more of them coming out to get us any minute now. I think that one looks kind of familiar. Let's go. He gestured toward the tunnel to our right, and we began limping into the darkness once more, hoping to find the way we'd come. We traveled the path for about 10 minutes. It's always hard to recognize a trail you've only traveled one direction one time, and this was certainly not an exception. With every foot we traveled, the air grew more and more stale. The condensation building on the walls glistened just a touch more. I tugged Shane's shirt once more, indicating I had something to say. He turned to me, and for the first time since the attack, I got a good look at his face. His cheeks, scraped and filthy, were streaked with tears. His eyes were bloodshot and wide open, as though he hadn't been blinking. I took a second to compose myself. I don't think this is the right way back. He frowned and scratched one of the bleeding wounds on his face, smearing it with the black liquid. It's gotta be, Caleb. It's gotta be. As he pointed the flashlight towards me, to see my lips as I began to try to speak back, his eyes moved away from me, focusing on something behind. His eyes, already wide, opened even further, half expecting to see another ragged man sneaking up on us in the shadows. I spun around to try to catch a glimpse of what had grabbed his attention. Mounted to one of the wooden support columns was a small metal ledge, likely used to set lanterns on in the dark. Sitting neatly on the ledge, however, was a leather-bound Bible caked in dust. He slowly walked over to the ledge and picked up the book, its spine crackling with age as he carefully opened it. As he did, a yellowed envelope fell out of the cover. As his focus remained on the Bible, I stooped down to pick up the letter. The envelope nearly fell apart in my hands, its ancient paper weak and brittle with age, but the note inside remained intact. Written hastily in poor handwriting was a short note. Reverend Yarrow, I tried to speak for you, but their minds were set. They're sealing the entrance tonight, and I ain't got the strength nor numbers to stop it. Please don't hold it against them. They're here, that's all. Scared of what they don't understand. I brought your Bible like you asked, but I couldn't find you nor your kin. I reckon you're deeper in now, still looking for your boy. I pray the Lord sees you through, and that he lifts this affliction from your family. I'll keep a light burning for you as long as I'm able. God go with ye. I scanned the letter several times through, trying to make sense of it. The simple opening of Reverend Yarrow caught me by surprise more than anything else. The story always went that the Yarrow family had killed the local preacher. Shane tucked the Bible under his arm and grabbed the letter from me, reading it through as I had. The panic on his face washed away with confusion, and then confusion with understanding. I guess he was putting pieces together faster than my 10-year-old brain could, because I still didn't understand what was going on. He solemnly folded the note up, tucking it back in between the pages of the scripture, and let out a heavy sigh. Caleb, if someone came and left this here, it means there's another way out. If we keep going, it has to. I'd heard that before, but he turned and kept walking through the narrow passage before I could protest. As he did, he coughed into his elbow, smearing the sleeve of his shirt with blackened blood. We continued in silence for a long time after that. Every step we took, I could tell we were only going deeper into the earth, not any closer to the surface where we belonged. I think Shane knew that too. The long, solitary passage we traveled once more became cheese-like in structure, and passageways began branching off from all around us. Eventually, the minecart trail we followed came to an abrupt end, the tunnel continuing up ahead. We kept walking. Soon, the already narrow passageway tightened, forcing us to walk single file instead of side by side. Then, a while later, the ceiling sloped down ever more gradually until we had to crouch to continue. As the crouch became a crawl, I begged Shane to let us turn around, to try to find the passage back to our entrance. I don't know if he still couldn't hear me, or if he was just ignoring me by now. The claustrophobic tunnel widened out, just long enough for us to squeeze alongside each other once more, allowing both of us our portion of the dim light guiding our way, growing ever dimmer as we pressed deeper. As we crawled in silence, Shane froze, allowing me to pass him up for a moment. I felt him grab my leg, and I looked back at him, only to see his eyes once more wide in terror as he pointed ahead. I looked forward to where he now pointed the beam of light, and felt my heart skip a couple beats. About 10 feet ahead of us, the passage widened into a larger chamber, just tall enough to stand. Sitting all together hunched and huddled with one another were at least half a dozen emaciated people, all similarly pale and hairless as the man we'd seen earlier. They sat almost completely silent, and the only sounds echoing in the chamber ahead were the occasional shaky, sputtering cough, or the shifting of their ragged clothes, or nails against the rock. I turned back to my brother, hardly able to breathe, let alone speak. I mouthed to him, "Turn the light off." He shook his head and instead inched closer to me, until he was able to whisper near silently in my ear, "I don't think they can see it. I think they're blind." I recalled the milky white eyes of the Yarrow man who'd attacked him, and looked back at the small family sitting before me. He was right. Every eye that wasn't crusted over with black ichor or closed tightly shut was similarly empty. There wasn't enough room for us to turn around in the cramped area we were in, and we both knew it. But if they were blind, and if we could be quiet, there was a chance that we could get into their chamber and turn around to leave. Shane seemed to have the same idea, and had already begun slowly sliding past me on the floor. It took about 5 minutes to comfortably make it into the chamber without making any noise. Shane made it out before me, and pulled me out by my arm into the chamber, giving me a chance to breathe before we turned right back around. I looked around into the small room we'd now found ourselves. It seemed to be only semi-artificial, with numerous stalactites hanging from the ceiling on one side of the area, wooden support columns propping up the other side. The small entrance we came through seemed to be one of many, as other passageways branched in and out of the room. The Yarrows, who I now numbered to be 8, huddled together in the middle of the room, unmoving and unblinking. In our silence, we must have been undetectable to them. They certainly wouldn't be able to smell us, as the rancid stench of rot overpowered anything else in the room. They wore tattered rags, and a couple wore nothing at all. Their breathing was ragged and laborious, every inhalation a raspy gasp. We had just begun to slowly turn to exit when I heard it begin. It started as almost a groan, a low guttural noise coming from one of the 3 women in the group. I turned to look just in time to see her sitting up straighter, the noise continuing and purifying in her voice. Another joined in with her, his scratchy voice almost harmonious with her dim howl. Within a few seconds, every Yarrow present had joined in, the sound reverberating and echoing down myriad tunnels extending outward. I realized quickly that they were indeed harmonizing, and had begun to hum a tune, one that I recognized but couldn't quite place my finger on. As the melody ended, they stopped in silence for but a second before beginning again, this time putting words to their song. On a hill, far away, stood an old rugged cross. I looked over to Shane, his eyes locked onto the small congregation. The emblem of suffering and shame. The flashlight trembled in his hand as he began to shine it wildly around the room. And I'll love that old cross, where the dearest and best. In the tunnels branching out of the central chamber, several others shuffled out, their empty eyes tearing up and oozing black liquid as they began to sing with the building choir. For a world of lost sinners was slain, one of them, a lurching figure with hunched shoulders and a misaligned jaw, carried with him a section of wooden support, bolted together in the shape of a crucifix. I looked back at Shane again and confirmed that tears had begun to run down his face the same way they had mine. So I'll cherish the old rugged cross. The congregation, now easily 15 strong, had continued to gather around the middle of the room, their spindly arms grasping out to lay hands on one another's shoulders. Their raspy voices pierced my ears, their song filled with agony and earnestness. Till my trophies at last I lay down. Shane grabbed my hand and stood abruptly. I worried for a second that we'd make too much noise, but the pained song drowned everything else out. I will cling to the old rugged cross. He pulled me around the center of the room, my jacket sleeve narrowly avoiding brushing against one of the standing few members. He pulled me into a hallway on the far side of the room, an entryway larger than any of the others that branched into the cavern. I looked back into the crowd as they finished their song, their hands clasping each other as black tears billowed out of their hollow white eyes. And exchange it someday for a crown. His hand clasped around my wrist was clammy and cold. Had I not been so fearful of what was going on behind me, I would have cried out in protest. He moved swiftly and quietly with thoughtful determination. Clearly, he believed that the way out was ahead. But I knew that he'd be wrong. The larger hallway ended up ahead, only a short distance from the huddled group of worshippers. The wall sloped inwards at a jagged angle, forming a narrow passageway that would need to be squeezed through sideways in order to proceed. Shane approached the crack in the wall, flashlight in hand, and swiftly moved to enter it when his feet knocked against something on the ground. He turned the light downwards, and we both let out a small gasp. There, so withered and gray that it had nearly blended in with the stone, was a dry corpse in shredded pastor's vestments, huddled against the base of the wall. Its arms were painfully thin and bony, wrapped around its shriveled, dry head as it held its knees close to its chest. Shane was about to push it out of the way to proceed when Reverend Yarrow's arm grabbed his outstretched wrist. The ancient man shakily raised his head, locking his gaze with my brother. Deep, hollow sockets, barely distinguishable from a skull's, held mournful eyes, untouched by the blindness of his kin. Tears, dark but watery, welled up around the lashless lids. A pain so old and so enduring etched into the wrinkled creases at their corners. His skin cracked and flaked as he looked at Shane, and his toothless jaw opened just wide enough to whisper, his head shaking slightly. "Please, don't." Shane grabbed the preacher by his shoulders and pushed him out of the way, a sickening crack echoing through the hall as his knobby elbow struck the floor. Shane wedged his body into the crack, forcing himself through as he turned briefly to verify that I was joining him. His eyes glistened at the edges with an oozing black tint, his gums gray between his bared teeth. I hesitated to join him, but his slimy hand reached out to me, pulling me through the crack and into the next area. I felt the stone become slick to the touch as I passed through. The room beyond the cracked entry was only about 10 feet across, just small enough that every surface was illuminated in the dying glow of our flashlight. The walls glistened, slick with the tar-like black ichor that dripped steadily into a shallow pool at our feet. The liquid was thick and sluggish, clinging to my feet like sap, with a slow ripple that made it hard to tell if it was flowing or stagnant. Beneath the ooze, it seemed the walls themselves moved, just barely. At first I thought it was my imagination, but then I saw it clearly. A pulse, slow, steady, like something was sleeping just beneath the surface. Veins, thick and dark, coiled across the stone like roots. I turned toward the far wall and saw the boy. He was embedded halfway into the rock, fused into the wall like a fossil. His tiny skeleton was curled in on itself, knees tucked to chest, one frail arm slack at his side. His skull was misshapen and oversized for his small frame, the bones thin and tight against the inky membrane that encased him. A stretched film of blackened tissue clung to his body, taut and glistening, rising and falling with each breath from the walls. If that's where the breath was coming from, it looked like he'd been preserved. I stared too long, waiting for my mind to catch up, and then I saw it. A finger, just one, twitched beneath the film. A small, mindless motion, but one that set off every alarm that had not yet been rung in my head. The boy was still alive in there. Shane had already dropped to his knees before him, the flashlight discarded in the ichor beside him. His shoulders sagged forward, his hands trembling in his lap. He didn't look at me. He didn't move. I stepped forward, reaching for him, my voice cracking with a fresh wave of panic. "Shane," I cried, choking through sobs. "Shane, please. I want to go home. Can we please go home?" He turned his head to me slowly. His face was slick with tears and dark fluid. His lips parted as he coughed again, a wet, ragged sound, and a thread of black mucus clung to the corner of his mouth. His eyes were glassed over, distant, already halfway gone. I picked the flashlight up out of the gloop and forced my aching body back through the crack as quickly as I could. As I made it through, I turned my gaze to the Reverend, still collapsed on the cold ground. He turned his eyes to me and let out a dry sob before painfully gesturing, begging for me to leave while I could. As I entered the congregation's gathering chamber, they each sat solemnly, empty eyes locked onto me. As I ran between them, none of them tried to stop me. It didn't take long to make it back to the chamber with the rail turntable. I trusted my gut instinct and began to run down the tunnel that the Yarrow man had begun to drag Shane down earlier. Of course, that would be the way out. He'd been trying to keep us out, not bring us in. By the time I reached the entrance to the mine, a piece of my heart broke to see the lights of rescue vehicles and policemen peering in as men removed the collapsed stone from the entrance. If we'd waited just a few hours, Shane would be standing there with me. They sent in just a couple of rescue crews over the coming days. None made it past the turntable room, apparently more than a mile into the mine before turning back. No one found Shane or any sign of anything living down there at all. I knew that must have been another lie the grown-ups told. Ivy City Council waited a whole month for any sign of Shane to emerge before Pa gave them the reluctant okay to reseal the entrance for good. I miss my brother. I have for decades now, and I wish I could have saved him earlier from the sickness that he had begun to share with the Yarrow family. But things will be okay now, I think. The scar on my hand, from the shard of glass that had been pulled out of my grasp all those years ago, has slowly blackened over the last few weeks. I think that despite my best efforts, I've started to come down with the disease that the Yarrows became afflicted with over a century ago, when they'd searched the mines for their own missing son. I find myself humming that old hymn almost every night. I think by now Shane's ears will be well enough to hear it as I sing it to him. I think I'll go to be with my brother soon. If you've felt basement terror lock you in, heard cryptic alerts that track your every step, or faced an unseen threat from haunted woods, sending paranormal signals, send your story to duskynights445gmail.com. I post new tales every Monday till Friday. Subscribe if you're still out there. There's a link below to toss in $1 or $2. Keeps me chasing these horrors if we make it. Don't go upstairs. Don't trust the alerts. Some things hunt you, no matter where you hide.